All right, welcome everybody. Mike Nicholas here with the Soul Unleashed podcast, and I'm excited to have as my guest today Bryan Ellis. And I'm going to read Bryan's bio here real quick rather than trying to do it from memory. So Bryan's a dedicated full-time marketer and part-time sponsored athlete who has committed himself to a lifelong pursuit of knowledge aimed at enhancing his physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. With a solid background in the Los Angeles music industry, where he spent several years as an accomplished audio engineer, Bryan's work earned him accreditation on multiple gold and platinum records. This is all pretty cool. Notably, he embarked on a remarkable world tour in support of a top 10 album, a period that fueled his passion for exploration and travel. Bryan, are you still on the West Coast?
No, I'm actually on the East Coast currently here in
Okay.
Atlanta, or just
Okay,
outside
cool.
of Atlanta in Marietta.
Cool. Following his time in the music industry, Bryan's adventurous spirit led him to relocate to Central America, where he resided for a number of years. Since then, he embarked on extensive travels covering over 20 countries and immersing himself in diverse cultures. His journey included remarkable experiences such as backpacking through iconic destinations like Egypt, Israel, and Jordan. Beyond personal exploration, Bryan actively engaged in humanitarian endeavors, leading several aid missions in Ethiopia and South America. And he spent time in the Wats of Thailand and Cambodia. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes,
Wats?
and it was
Okay,
actually
cool.
South Africa. I don't know if I put that wrong on there for the aid missions. Is Ethiopia and South Africa,
Cool. What did I say?
South America. I might have wrote it wrong.
No, no, no. You have South Africa, so my apologies. Ethiopia and South Africa. Cool. In recent years, Bryan's enthusiasm for running has taken center stage in his life. Fueled by a desire to push his physical and mental boundaries, he has undertaken some of the most grueling races and challenges worldwide. Notable accomplishments include conquering 100-mile races and completing remote challenges like crossing the Grand Canyon twice within a single day. Holy cow. His relentless pursuit of truth and self-discovery defines his character as he continually seeks to unravel new dimensions of human potential. Currently, Bryan holds a prominent position as the driving force behind RunBryanRun.com, a highly acclaimed endurance strength website. Drawing from his wealth of experiences, he generously imparts the wisdom he has gained to empower and inspire others on their personal journeys. In summary, Bryan's multifaceted journey, from his influential role in the music industry to his expansive travels, humanitarian contributions, and remarkable feats in the realm of endurance sports, illustrates a life defined by curiosity, resilience, and a commitment to sharing knowledge. Through Run Bryan Run, he continues to make a lasting impact by guiding individuals towards unlocking their true potential. Bryan, that is all awesome. And I just want to mention that the folks that we're talking to in our podcast, are people that are going through a spiritual awakening, and generally are left brain types like me, where we look for proof, we look for models, we look for evidence of things that might have struck us as unusual. Certainly would have struck me as unusual years ago. And so your story is pretty cool because you're going through that same spiritual journey. I wouldn't say same, but you're going through a similar spiritual journey. And that's what I'm hoping you can expound on today.
Yes,
So,
I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about the journey because that's exactly what it is.
tell us when did the spiritual part start?
The spiritual part of really my exploration journey really kind of came into focus is when I started world traveling. I didn't do much traveling when I was younger, didn't have access to the funds. You know, my mom was a single mom. She worked really hard just to provide a way for me to get an education and move forward in life. But once I got a chance to start experiencing other cultures beyond just the big cities and actually going into the smaller villages, smaller locations, and meeting people, I started to realize there was something more out there. Started just taking in these cultures and their experiences and the way of lives and understanding the blessings that we had, and finding appreciation for the fact that even people that would have what we would consider, less than the standard American lifestyle, how blessed they felt every single day and the joy that they took in life, and how many of them have different religions, different outlooks on life, and the way that what defines spirituality to them, but that they all found joy from it and they all found a path through it. And so that really opened my eyes and led me into kind of the quest for more. And I wanted to know more about the different cultures, different people all around the world, different religions, different just, I wanted to touch, feel, and experience these different places. And so that was really eye-opening to me and really led me down the path of trying to understand.
So tell us a couple stories about any of those experiences that you had, or maybe just a few that were most impactful to you.
Yeah, so that's one of those where it's almost even where to start. I've been every place from old city of Jerusalem, crossing into Palestinian territories, the occupied Bethlehem at the time, to which, obviously has a mix of many religions, and seeing the diversity there is incredible. I think the real perspective came when I led a few aid missions throughout Africa. At the time, we were working with a group called Waves for Water. They specialized in bringing water filters into remote villages. And when I say remote, I mean areas that you had to park your jeeps, and then you had to hike ways into. And then once you were getting into these villages, seeing that we were almost not welcome at first. There was a lot of apprehension by the locals to even talk to us. They've had bad experiences with, colonization and people coming in trying to push things, trying to take over areas pretty much to a certain extent. And what we were doing was completely different. We just wanted to give them something that could provide for a better life. And it was really eye-opening to see that these groups, their thoughts on what Western religion meant, and then, actually getting to know them a bit and understanding and unlocking a bit of their knowledge, and the fact that, that I don't know the best way to put it, but that there is so much more than just possessions, physical things around us, easy way of life, that there was a joy and a true knowledge to understanding that life every day is precious. And, one of the amazing things I always thought was when we walked into the village, as opposed to what I find in a lot of Western religions, was that the person we ended up talking to and having to almost convince our way into the village would be the oldest woman of the tribe. And they were actually looked at as the highest elder, or kind of the most important person in the village. So trying to relay our information, and their broken English, we had a translator to help, but the process of sitting down, breaking bread, and having a conversation with someone that comes from a total different lifestyle, and then the understanding that we were there not to try and change them, but to provide something, a bit of technology, simple water filter that you can buy on Amazon now, could change their lives. We'd see that. Sorry. Yep.
I'm sorry. I was just going to jump in and ask you, when you said Western religion, you're speaking, I assume, of Christianity primarily, right?
Yes. They're very apprehensive of people coming in with, using the Bible as kind of a way to honestly take over, and kind of push out their old ways.
So what was did they have a religion? Or I'm sure they did, some type of spiritual practice. What was that?
Yes. The spiritual practices were kind of different area to area, based South Africa was more westernized by that point. In the remote areas of Ethiopia, the religions, we didn't really talk a lot of religion, besides the fact of getting past the fact that we weren't trying to spread our religion. We weren't there to change them. We were just there to provide a resource to them that could change their lives for the better. That could actually, one thing that's, was really noticeable was the the water, obviously we were doing water, it's bringing filters. The quality of water was horrible. And the people actually in charge of going to get the water every day, they tasked that to young women. And I'm talking girls 8, 9 years old, carrying 2 5-gallon jugs, miles and miles and miles. And what this does is actually stunts their growth. It creates major problems for them as they get older. So the relaying just coming to terms and being able to understand that we could provide something that could actually change that and help them for the better. As far as spiritually, it, like I said, we didn't talk a ton about religion. It became more of a human conversation. And I think that really opened my eyes to the fact that, sometimes you hear the saying, religion separates, but spirituality brings us closer. And I think that that really stuck out to me, that we were not separate religions. We were humans coming together to talk. So that really inspired me. From there, I decided to do a backpacking trip through the Middle East, which was another eye-opening experience. Obviously, Israel itself is a mix of a bunch of diverse religions, especially in the old city. But we took it a step further and actually hitchhiked through Jordan, which is primarily Muslim and a mix of some other religions. And what we found was that they took us in with open arms in a way that I could have never have imagined.
How many
We
of
were
you were there when you say we?
That was me and one of my good friends. He actually he invited. We weren't actually great friends at the time. We just met in college, and
Hmm.
he had talked about going to. He's Jewish, and he talked about going to the Western Wall and doing a bunch of the religious stuff there. And I wanted to be a part of it. Didn't really have a fixed religion for me. Like I said, I'm more spiritual than anything, and so that was part of that quest was like, I want to come be a part of this. I want to experience what you're going to experience so I can take this home with me. And he's great because he was open to this whole idea of like, yeah, let's really get in there a bit. Let's not just take these tours. Let's not do this. Let's go figure it out as we go. And as I said, we literally crossed the border from Elat, Israel, into Jordan with no plan. Just our backpacks and our thumbs up, trying to find a ride.
Wow.
And, and yeah, and it was amazing because we met some great people along the way. Took us all the way up to Amman, which is like a 6-hour drive in total, stopping in Petra and just fully guided and
Hmm.
understand, just meeting people that were just incredibly open and just showing that, there's a lot of, there's a lot of back and forth about the different religions and people have things to say about certain people and certain types. But I found that going in with open eyes and an honest heart that inevitably again it became more of a human conversation and that spirituality took over. They understood that we were looking not to not to change them, more to understand, and if we could understand that's the ultimate goal. So
Was this after your experience with the water filters?
yes, this would have been after that.
Okay, so you had that perspective. What was your religious upbringing?
So my mom was raised Catholic, in a pretty strict Catholic household. Before that, my family was actually my ancestors mainly came over. Majority were German Jewish. My mother's last name is Saul. So they left in 19, I think, tens or something like that. Um, but the obviously through marriage, Catholicism was brought in,
Hmm.
and so that's where my mom was raised. My dad never really talked about religion much, so I don't know a lot about his background, to be honest, in that, and we're not 100% close, so I don't
So,
have those conversations with him.
so you weren't
But
raised Catholic, though?
no, no. So yes, my mom
Okay.
was raised strict Catholic, and I think a little too strict, and so she kind of stepped into a more of a spiritual role and
Hmm.
started talking more about just Eastern philosophies. Never really pushing anything on me, but just kind of opening to the idea that there's more out there. And that led me to even more travels where I decided to solo backpack through Thailand and Cambodia, spending time at Watts and learning from some of the monks there, learning a bit about Buddhism, some fundamentals of Hinduism, and some other things that were, being talked about uh, while I
What
was there.
when you did that, where was that in relation to the Middle East and South Africa? Was that before or
So
after?
that was actually after. So the backpacking trip through the Middle East really kind of opened my eyes that that's something that I really enjoyed. I really liked the idea of having to figure it out and just going. I was actually supposed to go with the friend I went to the Middle East with, but he couldn't get the time off work, so I ended up going by myself, which I think turned out to be a blessing in disguise, since it really forced myself to step outside my comfort zone and put a lot of faith in other people and just kind of dive head first rather than having someone to depend on. I didn't have anyone to talk to, so I had to make friends. I had to go out and find everything myself. It was a journey, it was an adventure, and it was eye opening.
So tell me about the monks. What were they like?
The it's an interesting mix. I would say, the first thing you kind of walk in and you see a monk smoking a cigarette, you don't really know what to take of it. But honestly, just having some short conversations. Again, a lot of it's in broken English, and it's just kind of, there's a lot of body language involved in the communication, expressions with your hands, trying to relay things. But getting to go walk with them as they did their daily gathering of food. So they'll have gardens and stuff, but a lot of their food is dependent on the local people. So they have groups that will actually go out through the city and collect food from local vendors and local people who come out at a certain time of day just to feed them. So which was really cool. Then they take all that food back and it's dispersed amongst the group. In talking to them too, one of the most important things that I really took away was that they made it clear to me that they were like, it doesn't matter what religion you are. Any religion can get you to the mountain, but to get to the top of the mountain, you just have to live it every day. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Christian, heck, pagan. It doesn't matter as long as you live a good life and you impart goodness on the people around you and in yourself. That is the secret to achieving, enlightenment in their culture. So, and obviously, the monks live a life based on suffering. Buddhism is, I guess, defined by a state of suffering until you can achieve enlightenment and get out of the cycle. So it was very interesting, and again eye opening to see how they lived with mere nothing and as a group, and yet still had incredibly positive outlooks and just the most friendly smiles you could ever meet on a human.
So how? This is more of a personal question, I guess. But how did you support yourself while you were doing all this traveling?
I've been really blessed, just to work jobs that have allowed me to do it. So when I moved to Costa Rica, I worked in the music industry for a long time,
Tell us about that because it was in your bio.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. So what did you do in the music industry?
So I was an audio engineer. I was an audio engineer in the urban music department at Capitol Records. Younger listeners probably won't know what that is. Older listeners will probably have heard of it. It was the biggest record label on earth at the time.
Hmm.
But I worked there during the time when, MP3s came out and illegal downloading. So it went from big budget productions to all of a sudden paychecks weren't clearing.
Mm.
So I got a contract buyout once the label kind of went under. And so I took that money and I went to Costa Rica. I decided I needed to take some time to myself, but I'm a kind of person that stays on the go. So when I was down there, I started a web development firm, and that allowed me to generate a decent amount of income and allowed me the ability to take, 2, 3 weeks off to travel at a time. So that's
Cool.
really what kind of supported me through that phase.
What did you do tour wise with the music business?
So yeah, so I recorded. I was an audio engineer in studio for majority of it. So I ran a couple different studios, and then I toured with Faith Evans. And if people are watching, you'll see her record behind me here.
Oh, cool.
Who was an amazing person. I feel so fortunate to have met her and had the opportunity to go on tour with her because I learned so much just about life and how crazy it can be, but how some of these people, how they can stay grounded amongst it all. So,
Did you work in the Capitol Records building in L.A.?
yep, the one that
Okay.
stacked looked like a stack of records.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, cool. So jumping forward now, just tell us about how the spirituality part of you relates to what you do now, especially the running and endurance part. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So honestly, my whole spiritual quest has kind of led me to it. First off, understanding that the physical body is a key component to the mind. So starting to dive into just being healthy. I wasn't necessarily the healthiest when I was doing the music stuff, so that's one of the reasons I was kind of happy to get out of it. Um, the mentality in the music industry can be a little overwhelming and self-serving and driving towards materialism. And once I left LA, I realized that that wasn't what I needed to be around. So I started putting a lot of focus on me and working out not working out, yes, but also working out the process of what it becomes to be like a whole human and to take advantage of this, this body that we're blessed with. So that led me into getting into fitness. Was doing that pretty heavily in Costa Rica. And then when I moved back, I actually started doing some Spartan races, which is an interesting thing. They're obstacle races, like these mud runs, and I ended up being really good at it. So I actually ranked top 10 in the world, got to travel and race in places like Australia and London, that are very high level. So that really kind of led me into running. And the more I started running and the farther I went, the realized that I started breaking past every limit I thought I had. I never thought I'd run, a 50K, and then I did it, and it was like, okay, I can go farther. I started running 50 miles, 60 miles, finding the hardest races I could, and I realized that I could go farther. And there's kind of a saying in ultra running that is the farther you go, the more you change. And if you run far enough, that's where you'll find God. And so I really relay it to almost like a spirit quest, like the Native Americans would do. When you get out there and you push yourself beyond what you think, you will have moments, you'll have visions, you will literally have just things appear to you. You'll have conversations with yourself that you never would have without the struggle that is imparted by pushing yourself farther than you have ever pushed yourself. So that's led me to, running 100-mile races. That also has led me to doing some what we call kind of adventure runs, which are things like running across the Grand Canyon twice in a day,
Mm.
things like running around the Grand Teton Mountains. So and I always relate it, and people ask me, why do you do it? And you sound crazy when you talk about it relating to spirituality, but I'm always like, well, you read the Bible. Where did Jesus go every time he wanted to talk to God? He went in alone into the wilderness, and I think that is a big part of it. And I think that's one of the reasons the sport has grown a lot, especially these ultra races and trail races, because it's not a bunch of if you went there you wouldn't expect the group you would see out there. It's not a bunch of just super fit people and just ripped, muscle bound folks. It's everybody, all
Hmm.
shapes and sizes, all ages. I run with people in their 60s and 70s now, and I think it's becoming a modern day way of people to step outside their comfort zone and really push themselves to that point to see what they find there. And we all find different things.
Can you give us any kind of example of any kind of spiritual experience that you've had doing these ultra races?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So when you get deep into the miles and you get alone, and especially at night, when you're really it's dark. It is all you have a headlamp shining in front of you. And one thing about these races is, unlike shorter races, you're with a lot of people in shorter races. Over these ultra marathons, you'll find yourself alone. The next person may be 3 or 4 minutes behind you, but you can't see him through the woods. So at night, you start to see things and you start to have conversations. Like I've talked to people that I've unfortunately lost a lot of friends in my life at young ages. One murder, overdoses, heart attacks in their 30s, like just random stuff. And I've had conversations with these people, and I know it's in my head, but at the same time, they're so real and they're so vivid. And then there's just the understanding that, again, every time you push yourself to that spot where you never thought you could do it, you realize you could go farther and that there is more out there. And that is what really excites me about it, is just understanding this gift that we were given. And that's one of the things I take away from it the most, is that we are blessed with these bodies and these minds, and they are meant to do something. So when I end, whether I'm at the pearly gates or I'm talking to the big ball of energy, when they ask, the question is, what did you do with your life? It's going to be very clear. I used every bit of my body, and I tried to see every bit of this planet that is just, it's stunning. Pictures can't do justice to what this world is. It's beautiful.
Have the lessons that you've experienced and learned while you've been going through these races and this pushing yourself, have they translated to other areas of your life, like relationships or family or work, or how'd that work?
Oh, of course, of course. It's once you've done something, once you've pushed past what your perceived limits are, everything becomes easier. Um, Whether it's being, taking on more work, whether it's having just so many things in front of you that you feel overwhelmed, you know that you can handle it. You understand in relationships that it's about the long journey, in that it's not, like when you're training for one of these things, you can't climb up the whole mountain in one step. You have to take small steps forward, and every now and then you're going to slide back, but you know that that's part of the journey. So in relationships, it's helped me quite a bit in just slowing down and understanding that communication is so key, and also understanding that we've all had different experiences, and it's the experiences that make us who we are. So not trying to impart my experience and assume that that's what they're going through. I think that it's really important to listen and try to understand versus trying to get your point across. And that's the biggest thing it's taught me, is this whole quest and this whole journey has been a journey of understanding. And so that's, I think, one of just the keys to life is, you don't have to get louder to have someone understand who you are. A lot of times the best way for them to understand who you are is to first step back and understand who they are.
Cool. How about the work that you're doing now through Run, Bryan, Run? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so my site, Run, Bryan, Run, I'm really proud of. It's grown well beyond my wildest dreams and continues to grow. It's allowed me to work with a lot of great brands, but more importantly, it's allowed me to change a lot of people's lives. A lot of what I do is I post training programs, or I'll post talk about just the places I've gone, travels, etc. And I get emails consistently about people that are going after the same goal, trying to achieve the same thing, and how do they do it. And so that's where, like, these training plans very specific to trying to achieve something that trying to push past their limits. And I get emails from people thanking me all the time, saying, "Hey, I never thought I could complete this race, and you encouraged me to do it. I set a new PR on this that I never thought I'd do. Hey, I'm older, and I never thought I could get into running 100 miles, and you're 40 and doing it, so it's never too late to start." So I think that's the biggest thing, and the biggest joy it brings me is when the feedback I get. Another part of it is I'm a knowledge seeker when it comes to just physical well-being. So a lot of what I do is I'm really into, like, the most latest studies on physical, just physical wellness, physical activity, and how it can improve our overall life. I'm not a big believer in taking, prescription medications. I believe in preventative maintenance versus going to the doctor for a quick fix. I don't necessarily think the quick fix is the best fix. I think a lot of times we can look at what we're doing in our lifestyles, and we can make the changes there, and that can lead to the point. of, changing. More of an, I guess, an Eastern medicine type of perspective.
So do you coach people now?
I do somewhat. I do. I do, I guess, more selectively. I do a lot of kind of generalized coaching, that I'd call it. I've put together specific training plans, very specific to very specific things.
Hmm.
So, say if you wanted to run across the Grand Canyon, I can help you with that, and I have all the information you would ever need to plan the trip, programming what you need to do to get your legs and body and mind ready. You want to do the presidential traverse. There are these kind of like big bucket list goals a lot of adventure seekers have. And so what I do them, I film them, and then I write about them. And so that's really where a lot of it comes in. As far as taking on personal coaching, I don't do that a lot just because I'm not a registered personal trainer. I have more knowledge than most do,
Right.
but that's just never been my goal, really, to do that.
So I try you generally trying to keep this about 30 minutes or so. So if you can just tell us how do my listeners find you and find the work that you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at runbryanrun.com, or sorry, at runbryanrun for Instagram,
And that's
and my website is the
I'm
best way
sorry,
to
that's
get a hold of me.
Brian is
Sorry.
Bryan, right?
Yeah, so yeah, at
Okay.
runbryanrun.com. That's Brian, Bryan,
Okay.
and runbryanrun.com is my website, which is run.com, and you can
Okay.
contact me on there. I respond to every message I get, and I get a lot of them. So
Okay. Awesome. Any last final thoughts?
one thing I'd like to impart, I don't know what the age group of the people that listen to this is, but, if I had any advice to give any of the younger listeners, I would definitely say, make sure you experience life to the fullest. There's no U-Haul following the funeral procession. Money's not going to show up to your grave. Really focus on living a full life, helping other people, and taking those experiences with you. Because in the end, if what's out there is what I believe is out there, that's what you're going to be imparted with, and those are the things you're going to take with you.
What do you believe is out there at the end?
Oh, that could start us down a long road. um, you know, I, how would I answer that without going in too far? Honestly, death scared me for a long time, which is one of the reasons I started the kind of the spiritual journey, was to try to understand what happens. Part of that was a deep dive into people with near-death experiences, and kind of looking at a correlation of these hundreds of people that have done it, and kind of seeing what the similar stories are. And the one thing that I started hearing time after time after time was that when they died, and these are from people that have flatlined, have
Hmm.
technically crossed over and been brought back, they talk about this feeling and sense that they were instantaneously burdened with or joyed with all emotions they had ever caused on other people. And an example is, if you were in grade school and you were picking on a kid, all those emotions that kid you picked on felt were imparted on you, and take that across your entire life. On the other hand of it is, if you caused a lot of joy in life, you also received all of that. To me, that is very enlightening and relates back to a lot of the yin yang, the karmic wheel. So to me, do I know if there is a man with a beard out there waiting for me? I wouldn't go that far, but I do believe there is a energy that we could call God, we can call energy, you could call whatever name you wanted to name it as. I believe there's something waiting for us, and there is a connection to all that is intertwined, and that when we die, we're going to be part of that, and what you have caused and your actions or life in life are gonna be weighed upon you. And the Egyptians had the old saying of, they weighed the heart to measure the soul. So it's, the famous scene of the pain of the judgment, with the bird weighing weighing the two. So I start looking at that, and I feel like there is something to that, and so that's
Do you
why.
believe that we get to come back and do it more than one time?
Now that is something don't, I don't know for sure, and that is definitely a big piece of Buddhism and Hinduism is going back and honestly suffering until you reach enlightenment. I don't know if that's the case. I really don't, and I don't know if you get put into a bird or a caterpillar or anything like that. I'd like to believe that I personally would like to believe that if you lead a good life and you help enough people, and in the end you receive all that joy you have given, you get to stay there. I think that would be amazing, because while I don't necessarily think that to live is to suffer, I do think that there is suffering involved, and especially with the world growing the way it is, that there are a lot of people that do have incredible hardships and go through things that I can't even comprehend. So I'd like to think when they get to the end, and when I get to the end, that I'll end up someplace where I can reap what I've sowed, and I can maybe enjoy it for a bit.
With all that you've seen and traveled and experienced, have you seen what you would describe as evil?
Yeah, I mean, there's evil out there. I mean, I don't know if I've necessarily seen it firsthand, but in my studies and just kind of in my quest for knowledge, in my research into things, and I won't go into any particular, I don't want to badmouth any religion or anything, because I don't want anybody to think that that's what I'm doing is judging. But there are people that have used things in ways that I do believe are evil, and I do believe that there is a negative energy to some people, whether they have chosen that energy or whether it has been thrust upon them by outside influences. Because again, I don't know what they've experienced to lead them there,
Where
but
does
there
that
are
come
people.
from? Do you think there's a devil that does this?
I mean, one might call the devil, the devil we know, as like, people are what our experiences are, and that's why I hate to judge, because I don't know what they've gone through, and there are people that go through horrible, horrible, horrible things, traumas that I could never relate to, so it's hard for me to judge them on that. But some people, I think, take that heavy, and it can lead them down the wrong path. And I do think there's evil out there, and it's one of those things that gives me chills to think about, because I know just in my studies that what I read and what I hear about is it's out there, and it's something that could creep in at any moment, and that's one of the reasons it's so important to lead a good, positive life.
All right, well, let's leave it there because that's a great way to end it. All right,
Excellent.
thanks for joining me, Brian. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy to talk to you, and maybe we'll do this again a little bit down the road, okay?
Excellent, Mike. I had a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you.